trade season is over, and it is time to get into every trade that every team made this season. So with no time to waste, we're going to try to do this as fast as possible. I'm going to rush. That's why my hair is wet. That's why I'm a little bit flustered. That's why my jersey's on backwards. I didn't have time to put it back on the correct way. So let's get right into it. Don't mind if I look at my cheat sheet off screen here. But starting off, we got the big James Harden trade. I'm not going to bury the lead here at all. The Houston Rockets traded James Harden, one of the best players in the league, for Dante Exum, Rodion Kurucs, Caris LeVert, and a Milwaukee 2021 second round pick, as well as all of Brooklyn's draft assets for the first round over the next 7 years, including 3 unprotected picks in the odd years and 4 draft pick swaps in the even years. In addition to that, they also got a 2022 Milwaukee first round pick, but here's the big but. Their season trading was not done with just that move. So in reality, they moved some of those assets for some more assets, and here's how that breaks down. Caris LeVert and the Milwaukee 2021 second round pick turned into Victor Oladipo. Rodion Kurucs turned into DJ Wilson in a trade attached with a PJ Tucker and DJ Augustin. And that 2022 Milwaukee first round pick turned into a 2023 Milwaukee first round pick. They also got DJ Augustin, like I mentioned earlier, the swap rights in 2021, although those are incredibly unlikely because they're with Milwaukee. So Milwaukee will have to absolutely collapse and Houston would have to just charge out of nowhere to be a championship grade team or some shit like that. And in addition to all of that, they also got Kevin Porter Jr., KPJ, and they traded away a 2022 second round pick of their own and PJ Tucker. So collectively, they traded James Harden again for Dante Exum, DJ Wilson. Almost forgot to mention, they traded Victor Oladipo for Kelly Olynyk and the 2022 swap rights with Miami, where they have the right to swap the worst pick that they have in 2022 for the best pick between them and Miami. So James Harden for Dante Exum, DJ Wilson, Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley, 3 first round picks from Brooklyn in 2022, 2024, 2026, and 4 Brooklyn swaps in 2021, 2023, 2025, and 2027, as well as Milwaukee's 2023 first round pick and the swap rights, again, worst for best with Miami in 2022. In addition to this, they traded a 2022 second round pick of their own and PJ Tucker, again, just to summarize it all, for DJ Augustin and KPJ. So in sum total, they got a whole lot of parts of this trade, but really nothing too special, no definitive piece to build around going into the future. So the James Harden trade is not a perfect trade, but it's still a good one considering how disgruntled he was. Now I know they had some better offers on the table earlier in the season perhaps, and when you compare it to the most recent disgruntled superstar trade in Anthony Davis, the haul doesn't look that great, but they got a lot of flexibility in recovering draft assets that they gave up earlier last year for Russell Westbrook. So really not a horrible trade, but not really a good one either. But where they get some credit is for trading a second round pick for Kevin Porter Jr. I think that is an excellent trade. Kevin Porter Jr. may not be a building block per se, but he's definitely a solid piece and a definitively decent NBA rotation player who has some solid upside. So I'm really high on that Kevin Porter Jr. trade. So all in all, my collective grade on them is an A-. It's a little bit charitable of me to give them an A grade, even with the minus attached. I know a lot of people are really shitting all over Houston for moving James Harden for so little, but I don't think the move's so bad. Next up, we're talking about the Knicks. Now, as you can see, I'm not going trade by trade. I'm going collectively what they gave away in exchange for what they got in return over the whole course of the season. So we're not going to break down each trade. We're going to break down the team's trade haul for the season. Very different. So the New York Knicks traded Dennis Smith Jr., a 2021 Charlotte second round pick, as well as Austin Rivers and Brazdeikis for a couple guys they waived and Derrick Rose, as well as a 2021 Philadelphia second round pick and a highly protected Miami second round pick that's incredibly unlikely to convey. So I would give this one a B-. They should have hung on to Terrence Ferguson, even though he's pretty much trash. He's still super young. I think he is worth a 15th roster spot, 14th, whatever. Put him on a two-way. I don't know. They could have hung on to him. I was higher on it when they kept him, but when I thought they kept him anyway. This is the second time I've had to record this video because last time the audio was trash, so pardon me. The acquisition of Derrick Rose definitively makes them better, and they are in the playoff hunt now. Having a veteran ball handling presence like Derrick Rose on the team is very valuable for this team, who doesn't really have very many good point guards. They have a lot of point guards, but none of them are really very good. So shout out to the Knicks for making a decent move this season. And next up, we're moving on to the Phoenix Suns. This is the most simple trade here. They traded money for Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig is a decent rotational piece, and giving up literally nothing except for cash is sort of the opposite of how the Phoenix Suns worked 15 years ago when it came to trades. So shout out to Phoenix for becoming a slightly better organization, trading for a guy like Chris Paul way earlier in the season. I didn't really detail the Chris Paul trade here because it is incredibly elaborate and involves a lot of moving parts that would really waste our time kind of going through that. So while I know this video is about every detail of every trade that happened this season, this trade, the Chris Paul trade, is just way too detailed. So not even factoring that in, I'm giving Phoenix an A- as well, just like Houston, because they acquired a star, but again, not even factored into this equation, but just paying nothing for a decent NBA rotation player is a solid move for a contending team like this. And now on to some bad organizations. We got the Sacramento Kings. They traded away Corey Joseph, Bjelica, a 2021 Memphis second-round pick, as well as a 2021 Lakers second-round pick, and their own 2024 second-round pick in exchange for including a highly unlikely 2022 swap in exchange for Mo Harkless, Chris Silva, DeLon Wright, Kabengele, who they waived, and Terrence Davis, as well as money. They also failed to move Jabari Parker, so they waived him. And I'm giving the Kings an F. They're a garbage organization. They got worse and got rid of a bunch of picks. This is a senseless move by them. DeLon Wright's an upgrade, but like barely, and the price you paid for him wasn't really worth it. I would rather have the Flyers on future second-round picks, guys, than a guy like DeLon Wright in a season where it's not like you're really doing much of anything. You probably aren't making the playoffs, so I think it's silly that they paid such a high price for DeLon. Next, we got the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets traded Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, Hartenstein, a 2023 Denver second-round pick protected through the first half, and the 2027 second-round pick, as well as a top 5 protected first-round pick through 2025, 6, and 7, in exchange for Aaron Gordon, Gary Clark, and JaVale McGee. Now, because the Nuggets needed some more depth and needed to get better, they did that, and they didn't really pay too high of a price. They only gave away a couple second-round picks and a distant future first that is protected from the most valuable part of the draft, the top 5. So overall, I'm going to give this one a B+. Not quite as good as the Rockets collective haul, but Aaron Gordon is a solid piece that's going to make them better and hopefully be able to match up pretty well with guys in the playoffs. He's very switchy, can guard, the wings and the bigs very well, and is a decent shot maker. Going to make a pretty big difference. And JaVale McGee, valuable piece of a big man there. Gary Clark, is he better than Gary Harris? I don't think so, but it's not terribly too far off. Moving on now, we got the Chicago Bulls, who I think won the trade deadline for sure by acquiring the best player. We got the Bulls trading away Otto Porter Jr., Wendell Carter Jr., Luke Cornett, Daniel Gafford, and Chandler Hutchinson, as well as a 2021 and 2023 first-round pick protected in the top 4. So in exchange for that, they got Vucci Main, Chief, aka Al-Farouq Amino, and of course when I say Vucci Main, I mean Nikola Vucevic, obviously. You don't know Vucci Main? Burr. Daniel Tice, Troy Brown Jr., and Javonte Green, as well as money. They got money in exchange for all of what they gave up. And I'm going to give this an A+. I mean, they got the best player at the trade deadline. They're going to be a tough 6th seed type of team. And ultimately, I like what Jacob said about how this is similar to the Bucks earlier in the preseason trading for, I said preseason, but I meant before the season started. Trading for Jrue Holiday, and that it is a good way to show your best player in Zach LaVine on a soon-to-be expiring deal that you're serious and that you want to maintain his talent, keep him on your team, and get better. So shout out to the Bulls. That new front office is making good moves. The Garpax era is over, so I'm happy for Chicago fans everywhere getting Vucci Main to pair with Zach LaVine. Moving on to the Celtics, the other side of part of this Bulls haul. They traded away Jeff Teague, Daniel Tice, Javonte Green, 2 second-round picks, which are so far unidentified, and cash for Evan Fournier, Mo Wagner, and Luke Cornett. And because of the value they got in return for their 2 second-round picks and Evan Fournier. I'm going to give this a B+ as well. Getting Mo Wagner and Luke Cornett to replace Daniel Tice is fine when you consider that they did it to get under the luxury tax. So it's a sort of necessary move. A guy like Daniel Tice isn't worth going into the luxury tax for, so getting a couple guys who can combined pretty much approximate to the same level of talent and play the same position, that's just fine. And though Evan Fournier had a horrible debut, he's a efficient 19 or 20 point per game scorer who can shoot the 3-ball. Really adds a lot of depth to the Celtics, who need that help considering how poor they've performed this season. But for 2 second-round picks, getting an expiring Evan Fournier looks pretty good. B+. After that, we got the Portland Trailblazers, another dead simple trade deadline move. Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood were traded from Portland to Toronto in exchange for Norman Powell. Norman Powell is the best player in this trade, so I give them a solid B. Now, it's not a earth-shattering move, but they do get better, and I think that matters for a team like Portland, who's looking to go from consistent playoff level to actual contention. Picking up a Norman Powell grade player is a significant move, not a super significant one, but it's a good one. B. Next, we got the Utah Jazz, who simply traded away a second-round pick in 2021 from Golden State for a guy from Toronto by the name of Matt Thomas, who is a younger prospect, but not too young. He just doesn't have very much NBA experience, who can shoot the 3-ball, and he adds some guard depth to that team, who is currently in contending status. And so trading a second-round pick for some depth is a move that a contender needs to make. So I'm going to give that a B-. Next, we got the Atlanta Hawks trading away Rajon Rondo for Lou Williams and 2 second-round picks, one from Portland in 2023 and one from the Clippers in 2027. I'm going to give this trade an A because they got the best player in this trade and picks on top of that. I don't know exactly how they managed to pull off attaching the picks to this. I guess the Clippers were desperate for a point guard, and Lou Williams, though has taken a step back, is still a decent NBA player. Definitely an upgrade again, I say. So shout out to Atlanta getting better. Even though they're not really in contending status, they got picks as well. So, I mean, A. And now we're talking about the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks traded away James Johnson, Iwundu, and their second-round pick this year for J.J. Redick and Nicolo Melli. I'm going to give this one just a C+, because giving up a pick in addition to these things is really just like a sweetener, and it's not really something they needed to do. J.J. Redick is good, but not that good, and it doesn't really move the needle very much for either team. But New Orleans, apparently, this is news that came out today, J.J. Redick was super unhappy about being traded to Dallas. So it makes it look even worse for Dallas. They got the best player, and they got better, but it's not that fantastic of a move. And J.J. Redick was probably going to go on the buyout market if they didn't make this move anyway. So it's a fine move, nothing special, C+. Next, we got the Hornets. This is a move where they're basically just kind of on some Robin Hood shit, but, you know, not really to any extreme degree. The Warriors desperately needed to get out of the, or I don't know about get out of the luxury tax, but they needed to lower the luxury tax bill at least, because I believe they're deep into the repeater tax, although they're one of the richest franchises in the NBA, so they can afford it. But the guys that they offloaded were some of their worst talent, and in exchange for that, the Hornets actually traded up in terms of second-round picks in years. They traded away their 2025 second-round pick for a 2022 Toronto second-round pick, cash, and Brad Wanamaker. This is just taking advantage of Golden State, so shout out to Michael Jordan for not making any stupid moves at the trade deadline when you're on the brink of a playoff berth. So I'm going to give this one an A as well. Next, we got the Spurs doing the same thing where they failed to trade LaMarcus Aldridge, so I'm going to penalize them for that. But they traded a non-NBA player who they just have the rights to, who's currently a Korean League All-Star, for Marquise Chris, who is a decent NBA player, and money. So the Golden State Warriors traded cash and a player to 2 teams to save themselves some money. The Spurs and the Hornets were the teams that benefited from that. So for the Hornets, I gave them an A. The Spurs, being penalized for not moving LMA for literally anything, I'm just going to give them a B+. Now, the Miami Heat, they traded away Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley, Mo Harkless, that fucking bum that we don't talk about on this channel, Chris Silva, and a 2022 first-round pick swap, worst to... You know, we already talked about that in the Houston trade, as well as their 2027 second-round pick for Trevor Ariza, Bielitsa, Oladipo, and the worst of that 2022 swap. And I'm going to give this one an A as well, because they got the best player, didn't give up too much. They kind of got rid of some low grade, high pay talent in exchange for some guys who are going to help them bounce back. The Heat are in a similar position to Boston this season, so I'm hoping that they can get back into contention status. But if these moves don't do it, then I guess Victor Oladipo just isn't that good. Regardless, I'm giving them an A. Now back to the Golden State Warriors. They traded away Marquise Chris, Brad Wanamaker, a 2022 second-round pick, and 2 units of cash for a Korean League All-Star and a 2025 Charlotte second-round pick. I'm going to give them a D-. They passed because they did what they had to do, but they didn't get any better while doing it. So, you know, they did okay, but they really didn't do anything to move the needle for them to get better. And so I'm definitely not going to give them a good grade, but it's still a passing grade, you know. D- for Golden State. Next, we're going back to the Pelicans. The Pelicans traded away J.J. Redick and Nicolo Melli for James Johnson. We want to do a 2021 Dallas second-round pick. And they didn't trade away Lonzo Ball, who allegedly wants to stay in New Orleans now, but I'm not entirely sure of that. We will see how that pans out, but Lonzo was supposed to be one of the big names in the move around the trade deadline, and he did not get moved. So I'm going to give New Orleans a D. They also got some really bad press from J.J. Redick, so, you know, they need to get this guy some more help, right? So D. Now we're going back to Toronto to examine the other side of that trade. Traded away Norman Powell, Terrence Davis, and Matt Thomas for Gary Trent Jr., Rodney Hood, and a 2021 Memphis second-round pick. And they failed to move Kyle Lowry, the biggest name who was supposed to be moved at the trade deadline. Now, Kyle Lowry, the best Raptor of all time, is on an expiring deal. If he just walks, then that really sucks for Toronto, but apparently that's something that front office is willing to live with, according to you know, the rumor mill that I've seen around on Twitter. But getting Gary Trent Jr. is a nice future-oriented piece. Rodney Hood helps to replace Norman Powell's buckets, and both of them combined make for a pretty decent haul, although not trading Kyle Lowry and only getting this in return for Norman Powell is not the best thing, but they definitely did better than, say, New Orleans, who failed to maximize Redick, but still got something for him. So I'm going to give them a B-. They didn't do as good as the Blazers, who acquired the best player in that trade, nor as good as the Utah Jazz, who took advantage of Toronto's need to open up a roster spot just in case they needed to move Kyle Lowry, but they still did pretty good. Nothing bad happened in Toronto at the trade deadline, so shout out to them, B-. After that, we got the Los Angeles Clippers, the other LA team, if you will. They traded away Lou Williams, Fiondu Kabengele, a 2023 Portland second-round pick, their own 2027 second-round pick, and cash for Rajon Rondo and a incredibly unlikely pick swap in 2022. I'm going to give this a D+ because, again, they set out and did exactly what they wanted to do. They acquired a playmaker at the trade deadline. But at what cost? You know, like, you could argue they got worse. Maybe Rajon Rondo will be better in the playoffs than Lou Williams ever has been, because he tends to just turn it on and, you know, go hard as shit that time of year. But, you know, that's a bit of a dice roll, so I'm gonna give them a D+. They pass with a little bit more credit than some of the other teams that got poor but passing grades. But, you know, ultimately, this is a questionable trade deadline for the Clippers. Moving on to Milwaukee, they traded away Torrey Craig, DJ Augustine, DJ Wilson, their own 2023 first-round pick, and a very unlikely pick swap for PJ Tucker, Rodions Kurucs, and their own 2022 first-round pick, as well as some cash from that Torrey Craig move. And I'm going to give this an F because they're in contention status and they got worse. PJ Tucker, maybe worse than DJ Augustine, depending on the matchup and the situation. So I wouldn't really be too happy about this trade season if I was a Milwaukee fan. And if you are a Milwaukee fan, let me know if you are happy with the acquisitions and trades that you made this year. But overall, this is our second F that we've given out so far. Next up, we got the Pistons, who traded away DeLon Wright, Derrick Rose, Svi, and the 2027 Houston second-round pick in exchange for Corey Joseph, Hamidou Diallo, Dennis Smith Jr., and 3 second-round picks, 2 in 2021 from Charlotte and the Lakers, and 1 in 2024 from Sacramento. Detroit being a horrible team, they don't really need to keep their veteran talent, and acquiring youth is beneficial to them, gives them a chance to develop it, see if they have a little bit more than the other team who traded them away bargained for. Dennis Smith has looked pretty good, and so and 3 second-round picks is pretty good too. So I'm going to give them a B. Next, we got the Cleveland Cavaliers. They traded away Kevin Porter Jr., JaVale McGee, Dante Exum, a 2022 Milwaukee first-round pick, and the worst of either Utah or Cleveland's 2024 second-round pick in exchange for Jarrett Allen, Taurean Prince, Hartenstein, a 2023 Denver second-round pick protected through the first half of the second round, a 2027 Denver second-round pick, and a 2022 Houston second-round pick. And they also failed to move Andre Drummond, who was waived and then signed with the Lakers. I'm going to give this a C because acquiring Jarrett Allen is a huge plus, but giving away Kevin Porter Jr. for a second-round pick is a huge minus. Overall, okay trade, but really nothing special happening in Cleveland in this trade season. Maybe Jarrett Allen is going to prove to be a monumental franchise piece at some point in the future, but right now he's just like a serviceable NBA center who's pretty good at what most NBA centers need to do. C. Next, we got the Pacers, who traded Victor Oladipo for Caris LeVert and a second-round pick from Milwaukee in 2021. And I'm going to give this an A. They got a better player and a pick for Victor Oladipo. Caris is on a longer contract. He's better, and they got a pick. So, not much else to say. He plays the same position, too. You know, like, I'm confused as to why Houston didn't want Caris. I get that he's a little bit older, but getting Oladipo instead of Caris, huge mistake by Houston. But Indiana got the beneficiary end of that deal. So, shout out to Indy. A. Next, we got the Philadelphia 76ers, who traded away Tony Bradley, Vincent Poirier, and their 2025 and 2026 second-round picks for George Hill and Brazdeikis. Now, they filled a need by acquiring George Hill. He was like their third option behind Kyle Lowry and Lonzo Ball, but it sucks that they failed to get those guys. However, they didn't give away too much to fill in the need of getting another point guard. And Brazdeikis is not a horrible NBA player, better than anyone else they traded away. So overall, they got better and didn't give up too much. I'm gonna give it a B. The Orlando Magic traded away Vucci Bane, Nikola Vucevic, Chief, aka Al-Farouq Amino, Evan Fournier, Aaron Gordon, and Gary Clark. Wow, that's so much of the Magic's talent. For Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, Jeff Teague, who they waived, 2 first-round picks from Chicago in 2021 and 2023, top 4 protected, and a Denver first-round pick in 2025, 6 or 7, protected in the top 5, as well as 2 unidentified second-round picks. Overall, I'm going to give this a B- because they did what they needed to do in trading away their veteran all-star grade talent, as well as their non-all-star grade veteran talent, in order to get a little bit younger, look a little bit more towards the future. They got plenty of picks, and I think that is a solid haul for everyone they traded away. Even though it's a pretty significant amount of talent that they gave away, they also got a pretty significant return, so B-. Now we're going over to Brooklyn to examine that James Harden trade one more time. They traded away Jarrett Allen, Rodion Kurucs, Taurean Prince, Caris LeVert, all of their first round picks, as we've discussed, for James Harden and a second round pick in 2024, the worst of Utah or Cleveland. And I'm going to give this an A++. They really got the most out of that pick, or out of not that pick, but all of their picks, or 3 of them at least, and then the ability to swap in 4 other drafts, plus some other franchise not franchise pieces, but pieces that are useful, like Taurean Prince and Jarrett Allen and Caris LeVert, for, a bona fide superstar. Might be a B+ player, but this is the A++ trade. Now we're going over to OKC, who traded away Hamidou Diallo, Trevor Ariza, George Hill, and Terrence Ferguson for Austin Rivers, Tony Bradley, Svi, that fucking bum we don't talk about who got waived, thank God, a 2025 and 2026 Philadelphia second, a 2027 Houston second, as well as a 2027 Miami second. But they failed to trade Al Horford, who they still have for multiple years after this. However, it would have been nice if they would have gone full tank and actually traded Al Horford. So I don't really think they did anything too special, but they didn't really fuck up either. C-. The Washington Wizards traded away Mo Wagner and Troy Brown Jr. for Chandler Hutchinson and Daniel Gafford, who are both younger, worse players than both the guys they traded, but have more upside than either one of them. And the Wizards, not being a good team this year, don't really need to get better. They need to get younger and have more upside for the future. So this is a good move, but not a great move. I'm going to give it a C. And now finally, we are towards the end of this video. We're going to talk about the 3 teams that didn't make any moves as far as trades this season. We got the Memphis Grizzlies, my Memphis Grizzlies, who failed to move Gorgui Dieng. That sucks. We ended up waiving Gorgui. I get that he's maybe not worth the money to our front office, but it would have been nice to, attach Grayson Allen to Gorgui Dieng, maybe a couple second-round picks or something like that, in exchange for, maybe a Tim Hardaway Jr., something. It's just someone good. I would have loved to pick up Victor Oladipo like I predicted in my last video. If you want to compare the trades that actually happened to the trades that I thought should happen around the deadline in a video I published a week ago, please go check that out. It's a really good video, I think. And, it came out pretty well. The audio is fine. Hopefully this one is better. But yeah, F for Memphis for not doing anything. The Minnesota Timberwolves also stood pat. They should have traded Rubio, who is like their only veteran piece other than Ed Davis, but Ricky Rubio is actually worth something, can contribute to winning basketball. It would have been good for them to be able to trade Ricky Rubio, but they just didn't. So F, they didn't do anything. And then finally, the Lakers. The Lakers were in contention to get Kyle Lowry, who is, a top 20 NBA player. But they said no because they want to hang on to their 21-year-old prospect in Talen Horton-Tucker. It's just silly. I mean, I know you're still probably the favorites out of the West without Kyle Lowry, but you might as well secure that a little bit more by getting that severely top-end NBA talent in Kyle Lowry. Talen Horton-Tucker is good, but not great. He's not probably one of the 10 best 21-year-old players in the NBA. Like, he's fine and good, but nothing special. However, they are acquiring Andre Drummond, which fills the need for them. He's not really anything special, but he is serviceable in select roles. He's a very low IQ player, I guess. He can figure some stuff out. He's a multiple-time All-Star, but the NBA has sort of figured out how to scheme around Andre Drummond, and the Lakers are going to need to be smart in their center rotations to maximize their roster. So, failing to make any moves at the deadline, and especially not getting Kyle Lowry, I'm giving the Lakers an F. So, let me know if you think I'm crazy. I know that this might not have been literally every single detail of every single trade that's happened this trade season, but I think it's pretty close. I've revised this a few times and waited a little bit to see who got waived. After I recorded this the first time, Terrence Davis and Vincent Poirier got waived from the New York Knicks, so that made me readjust, and I want to wait a little bit longer to see who else is getting waived. So, again, let me know what you guys think. Hit me up on NBA Twitter, at NBA_Rudy. I guess it's not NBA Twitter all the time. It's just Twitter. Pay your taxes. Like this video. You're going to have to do it anyway eventually, so please just go ahead and get it out of the way now. If you made it this far in the video, you do literally owe me an entire like. So please like the video, subscribe, all that shit. Thanks. Bye.